The Last Stand of Humanity. The tactical display bathed Commander Maya Chen's face in an eerie blue glow as she studied the approaching enemy fleet. Each red marker represented a Sylvan Empire vessel, each one a harbinger of destruction for what remained of humanity. 342 markers in total, against one human ship. Status report, Maya said, her voice steady despite knowing what the answer would be. Lieutenant Cade Wilson looked up from his console, the holographic readouts reflecting in his eyes. The Sylvan Armada is maintaining formation, Commander. They've deployed in a classic Talon pattern. Main battle group will be within weapons range in 17 minutes. Maya nodded, rising from her command chair to approach the central display. The TSV Horizons, Terran Science Vessel Horizons, was humanity's last true warship, the last creation of Earth's shipyards before they were reduced to radioactive slag 3 years ago. The prototype vessel represented everything humanity had left to give. And us? She asked quietly. Quantum core is stable at 68% capacity, reported Chief Engineer Sato from her station. Dimensional shields are at maximum. Conventional weapons primed. She hesitated before adding, the D-Space projector is online, but untested in combat conditions. Maya felt the weight of every eye on the bridge. The D-Space projector was the reason the Horizons existed, a theoretical weapon designed to exploit weaknesses in the fabric of space-time. A desperate gamble by desperate people. Dr. Volkov, Maya called out to the scientist hunched over a specialized console in the corner of the bridge. Will it work? Alexei Volkov, the brilliant physicist who had designed the D-Space projector, looked up with bloodshot eyes. Theory suggests it should, Commander. But we need a massive gravitational catalyst to amplify the effect. Like the pulsar, Maya said. Precisely. Volkov pointed to the massive neutron star visible from the bridge's viewports. The NS-7362 pulsar has exactly the right rotational frequency to serve as our amplifier. If we can lure the Sylvan fleet into the quantum resonance zone, his voice trailed off. Everyone on the bridge knew what he wasn't saying. This plan had never been tested. It might kill them all. But with humanity's remaining colonies falling one by one to the relentless Sylvan advance, they had nothing left to lose. Maya turned to face her crew, 27 men and women, all that remained of the original complement of 115 after their desperate escape from Earth's destruction. 27 humans standing against an empire that spanned half the galaxy. I won't lie to you, Maya said, her voice carrying across the bridge. Our odds are terrible. The Sylvan Empire has hunted us across 17 star systems. They've destroyed our home planet. They've shown no mercy, no interest in negotiation. She paused, looking at each crew member in turn. But they don't understand humans. They think that by destroying Earth, they've broken us. They think we're just animals fighting for survival. Maya's eyes hardened. They're wrong. We're fighting for something more. For every human they've slaughtered, for every child who will never see the stars because of them, for the very idea that creatures like us deserve to exist in this universe. Engineer Sato straightened in her chair. What's the plan, Commander? Maya gestured toward the tactical display. We position ourselves between the pulsar and the Sylvan fleet. We let them think they've cornered us against the gravity well. Then, when they enter the resonance zone, we activate the D-Space projector. And if it works? Asked Lieutenant Wilson. If it works, Dr. Volkov interjected, the quantum resonance will cascade through their fleet, tearing apart the subatomic bonds of their ships' hulls. In theory. Maya nodded. And if it doesn't work, we take as many of them with us as we can. A silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the soft beeping of the sensors. Incoming transmission from the Sylvan command ship, reported Communications Officer Lyanna Farrell. They're demanding our surrender. Maya's mouth curled into a grim smile. Put it on screen. The main display shifted to show an alien face. Admiral Tsilos of the Sylvan Empire stared at them, with 4 black eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. His gray-green skin was covered in ritual scars denoting his rank and battle honors. The universal translator converted his clicking speech into English. "Human vessel," Xylos said, the translator rendering his tone as coldly amused. "Your persistence has been noted. It will be studied. But this chase ends now. Surrender your vessel, and your lives will be preserved in our biological archives." Maya stepped forward, ensuring she was visible in the return feed. "Admiral Tylos, you've pursued us across 17 systems. You've destroyed our homeworld. And now you offer to preserve us like specimens in a jar. It is more than most species receive," Xylos replied. "Your adaptability is remarkable for such primitive beings. The Sylvan Imperium wishes to understand this trait before it is lost." Maya's eyes narrowed. "Then understand this, Admiral. Humans don't surrender. Not when we have nothing left to lose. Not when we're cornered. That's when we're most dangerous." She signaled for Farrell to cut the transmission. Tylos's face disappeared from the screen, replaced once more by the tactical display. "They're accelerating," Wilson reported. "All vessels. They're coming in hot." Maya returned to her command chair. "Helm, take us on approach vector to N7362. Full impulse. Make it look like we're seeking refuge in the pulsar's radiation shadow." Helmsman Rivera's hands flew across the controls. "Aye, Commander." Course plotted. The horizon surged forward, its experimental engines flaring blue against the blackness of space. The massive pulsar grew larger in the viewports, its intense radiation requiring the shields to work at maximum capacity just to protect the crew. "Sylvan Fleet is adjusting course to intercept," Wilson called out. "They're splitting into 3 battle groups to cut off potential escape vectors." Maya nodded. "Predictable. Keep our course steady." "Commander," Dr. Volkov said quietly, approaching her chair. "There's something you should know about the D-space projector." Maya glanced at him. "Now, we're a little busy, Doctor." "It's important." Volkov's expression was grave. "The projector doesn't just affect physical matter. It creates a quantum entanglement field. If we're too close when it activates, we'll be affected too." Maya finished for him. "I assumed as much." Volkov looked surprised. "And you still plan to go through with it?" Maya's expression didn't change. "Do we have a choice, Doctor?" Before he could answer, the ship rocked violently. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Sylvan Advance Force has entered weapons range," Wilson reported. "Energy weapons impacting our aft shields." "Return fire," Maya ordered. "Conventional weapons only. Save the main power for the projector." The horizon shuddered as its point defense systems activated, sending streams of plasma fire toward the approaching Sylvan vessels. The smaller alien ships dodged with practiced precision, but one was caught by surprise and erupted into a brief, silent explosion. "One enemy corvette destroyed," Wilson confirmed. "But there are plenty more where that came from." Maya watched the tactical display intently. The main Sylvan battle group was closing fast, with Admiral Tylos's command ship at its center. Just as she'd hoped, they were following the horizons directly into the pulsar's gravitational influence. "Distance to optimal projection point?" Maya asked. 400,000 kilometers, Rivera replied. 2 minutes at current speed. Another hit rocked the ship, harder this time. Sparks showered from a conduit overhead. "Shields at 82%, reported Sato. "They're probing for weaknesses." Maya opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, secure for extreme gravitational conditions. This is not a drill. I repeat, secure for extreme gravitational conditions." Throughout the horizons, crew members strapped themselves into acceleration harnesses. In medical, the wounded were secured to their beds. In engineering, teams locked down all movable equipment. "Sylvan flagship is hailing us again," Farrell reported. "Ignore them," Maya said. "They're just trying to distract us." The pulsar's radiation was intense now, creating strange visual distortions on the viewports. The ship's sensors struggled to maintain accurate readings in the electromagnetic chaos. 300,000 kilometers to optimal position, Rivera announced, gravitational shear increasing. The ship groaned ominously as the pulsar's tremendous gravity began to pull at its structure. Warning indicators flashed on multiple consoles. Hull integrity at 94% and falling. Sato called out. The radiation is weakening our molecular bonds. The Sylvans are experiencing the same effects, Wilson observed, pointing to the tactical display. Several enemy vessels had fallen out of formation, their propulsion systems struggling against the gravitational tide. Maya leaned forward in her chair. Status of the D-space projector. Power levels at optimal, Volkov replied, his fingers dancing across his specialized console. The pulsar's radiation is actually helping to charge the quantum capacitors. We'll be ready when we reach the projection point. Another volley of Sylvan weapons fire struck the horizons, causing the lights to flicker momentarily. Shields at 67%, Sato reported. One more concentrated barrage like that, and we're in trouble. 200,000 kilometers, Rivera announced. 1 minute to projection point. Maya studied the tactical display. The Sylvan fleet had fully committed to the pursuit now, with even Admiral Xylos's massive command ship plunging into the pulsar's gravitational well. Just as she predicted, the Sylvan's arrogance was leading them into her trap. Enemy vessels charging primary weapons, Wilson warned. They're preparing a synchronized barrage. Maya gripped the arms of her command chair. Evasive pattern delta. Make them work for it. The horizons banked sharply, its maneuvering thrusters straining against the pulsar's pull. Beams of Sylvan energy weapons sliced through the space the ship had occupied a moment before. 100,000 kilometers, Rivera reported, sweat beading on his forehead from the concentration required to navigate in these conditions. 30 seconds to projection point. Maya opened a direct channel to engineering. Chief Sato, divert all non-essential power to the projector. We get one shot at this. Acknowledged, Sato replied. The lights on the bridge dimmed as power was rerouted. Sylvan vessels are moving to surround us, Wilson called out. They think they've got us trapped against the gravity well. Maya allowed herself a tight smile. Let them think that. 50,000 kilometers, Rivera announced. 15 seconds. The ship shuddered continuously now, the combined stress of the pulsar's gravity and radiation taking its toll on the hull. Structural integrity at 82%, Sato reported. We can't stay here much longer. We won't need to, Maya replied, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Projection point reached, Rivera called out. Maya took a deep breath and gave the order they had crossed 17 star systems to deliver. Activate the D-space projector. Full power. Dr. Volkov's hands trembled slightly as he initiated the sequence. Deep within the horizons, the experimental quantum core surged with power. The lights throughout the ship flickered, then dimmed completely, leaving only the emergency lighting. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, in the space between the horizons and the advancing Sylvan fleet, reality itself began to distort. A sphere of warped space-time expanded outward from the ship, visible only as a strange rippling effect, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. On the tactical display, the effect was immediately apparent. As the quantum distortion field reached the first Sylvan vessels, their shields failed. Then, as the wave passed through them, their hulls began to lose molecular cohesion. It's working, Volkov whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. The quantum resonance is cascading through their fleet. One by one, the red markers representing Sylvan ships began to flicker and disappear from the tactical display. Not as explosions, there was no time even for that, but simply ceasing to exist as their atomic structure was torn apart by the fundamental forces of space-time. Pull us back, Maya ordered. Full reverse thrust. The horizon's engines roared to life, fighting against the pulsar's gravity to extract the ship from the expanding quantum distortion field. But they were too close to the epicenter. The edge of the field caught the horizon's stern, sending catastrophic vibrations through the hull. Structural integrity failing. Sato shouted over the deafening sound of metal tearing. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Emergency force fields activated, Wilson reported, his voice barely audible over the ship's groaning. Maya gripped her command chair as the bridge lurched violently. Status of the Sylvan fleet. Through the chaos, Volkov checked his readings. 87% destruction and rising. The quantum cascade is still propagating. Maya stared at the tactical display in disbelief. It had worked. It had actually worked. Hundreds of Sylvan warships, the pride of their empire, were simply disappearing. Tylos's command ship, she asked. Wilson checked his console. Still intact, but heavily damaged. They're trying to retreat. Maya's expression hardened. Not this time. Target their propulsion systems. Conventional weapons, full spread. The Horizons, damaged as it was, managed to fire a volley of missiles at the retreating Sylvan flagship. The massive alien vessel, its systems already compromised by the quantum distortion, could not evade. The missiles struck true, destroying its engines in a series of explosions. Admiral Tylos is hailing us, Farrell reported. Maya nodded. Put him through. The alien admiral's face appeared on screen, his command center in disarray behind him. For the first time, Maya saw something new in his 4 black eyes. What have you done? Tylos demanded, his translated voice trembling with rage and disbelief. This weapon, it violates the natural laws. You left us no choice, Maya replied coldly. You hunted us. You destroyed our world. You called us primitive. She leaned forward. But you forgot something important about us humans. Admiral, when cornered, we don't just fight to survive. We fight to win. The transmission cut off abruptly as another section of the Sylvan flagship disintegrated under the expanding quantum cascade. Maya turned to her bridge crew, who stared at their consoles in stunned silence. Get us out of here, she ordered Rivera. Best possible speed. As the Horizons limped away from the pulsar and the remnants of the Sylvan fleet, Maya surveyed the damage reports flooding in. The ship was wounded, severely, but it had survived. And more importantly, it had struck a blow that the Sylvan Empire would never forget. Humanity was not defeated. Not yet. Not ever. Defiance of the impossible. The aftermath of the quantum cascade was unlike anything the Horizon sensors had ever recorded. Where once had been the pride of the Sylvan Empire, hundreds of warships representing the pinnacle of alien technology, now existed only a spreading cloud of subatomic particles and distorted space-time. Damage report, Commander Maya Chen ordered, pressing a hand against a bleeding cut on her forehead. The bridge was in shambles, with several consoles destroyed and emergency force fields containing hull breaches in 2 sections. Chief Engineer Sato's voice came through the comms, strained and punctuated by coughing. Not good, Commander. The quantum cord is destabilizing. Coolant leaks on 3 decks. We've lost artificial gravity in sections 4 through 12. Casualties. Lieutenant Wilson checked his console, which flickered ominously. 7 confirmed dead. 19 injured. 8 critically. Maya closed her eyes briefly, honoring the fallen. Then her discipline reasserted itself. Life support. Operating at 64% capacity, Sato replied. We can maintain breathable atmosphere, but temperature regulation is failing. It's going to get cold in here. Maya nodded, rising from her command chair to survey what remained of the tactical display. Most of the Sylvan fleet had been completely destroyed by the quantum cascade, but a few vessels at the edges of the formation had survived, though heavily damaged. Among them was Admiral Tylos's command ship, now drifting powerless through space. What's the status of the D-space projector? Maya asked. Dr. Volkov looked up from his damaged console, his face ashen. The emitter array is completely burned out. The quantum core itself is unstable, oscillating between dimensional states. He hesitated. Commander, if we don't jettison the core within the next few hours, The resultant quantum collapse could tear the ship apart. Maya absorbed this news with a grim expression. The experimental weapon had worked beyond their wildest expectations, but at a terrible cost. Can we repair the damage? Get the projector working again? Volkov shook his head. Not without a full space dock. The technology was experimental to begin with. We pushed it well beyond its theoretical limits. So we have one victory, Maya said quietly, but no superweapon to take back to the remaining colonies. We have something better, said a new voice. Dr. Ilara Reed, the ship's xenobiologist, stepped onto the bridge. Her lab coat was stained with blood. Not hers, Maya noted with concern, and her normally immaculate appearance was disheveled. What's that, Doctor? Maya asked. Data, Reed replied, holding up a small data crystal. Complete sensor readings of the quantum cascade effect. The Sylvans hadn't encountered anything like it before. Their ships had no defense against it. With this information, we can develop countermeasures against similar weapons they might create, and potentially refine our own version. Maya considered this, so the technology itself isn't lost. Far from it, Volkov agreed, his mood lifting slightly. What we've learned today will revolutionize our understanding of dimensional physics. The colonies can build on this, create something more stable. A small spark of hope ignited in Maya's chest, but was quickly tempered by their immediate situation. The Horizons was crippled, drifting in space with a potentially catastrophic quantum core breach imminent, and they were still in Sylvan territory. We need to reach the nearest human outpost, Maya decided. Navigation. What are our options? Lieutenant Rivera checked his console. The Proxima Haven colony is the closest, Commander. But it's still 17 light-years away. With our engines in their current state, we'd never make it. Sato finished for him, her voice coming through the comms. The warp drive is completely offline. Conventional engines are at 31% capacity. Even if we could maintain maximum thrust, it would take us years. Maya frowned, considering their options. Then a thought occurred to her. What about the Sylvan ships? The ones that survived? Wilson checked the tactical display. 3 corvettes and Admiral Tylos's command ship are still intact, though heavily damaged. All show minimal power signatures. They're basically adrift. And their propulsion systems. Wilson looked up, understanding dawning in his eyes. Sylvan warp technology is different from ours. Their drives might have survived where ours didn't. Exactly, Maya said. Dr. Reed, what do we know about Sylvan ship design? Could we adapt one of their vessels for our needs? The xenobiologist considered for a moment. Their environmental systems are calibrated for methane-based atmospheres, which would be toxic to us. But their engineering decks are designed to be accessible in vacuum conditions. With proper equipment, we could potentially commandeer one of their ships. Maya nodded, which brings us to Admiral Tylos and his command ship. What's their status? Life signs detected, Wilson confirmed. The ship has emergency power only. Their weapons are offline, and their communications are limited to short-range transmissions. A plan began to form in Maya's mind. It was dangerous, potentially suicidal, but they were already living on borrowed time. Here's what we're going to do, she announced. We're going to board Admiral Tylos's command ship and commandeer it. We'll use their warp drive to reach Proxima Haven. The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed this audacious proposal. Commander, Sato's voice came hesitantly through the comms. The Sylvans will resist, and even if we succeed, their navigation systems will be incompatible with our star charts. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Maya replied. Right now, our priority is surviving long enough to deliver Dr. Reed's data to the colonies. That information could turn the tide of this war. She turned to Wilson. Assemble a boarding party. 20 personnel. Combat trained. Full vacuum gear and weapons. Yes, Commander, Wilson replied, already moving to carry out her orders. Dr. Volkov, Maya continued. How long can we keep the quantum core stable? The physicist consulted his readings. 4 hours, possibly 5, if we power down all non-essential systems. Do it, Maya ordered. Divert all power to life support and the shuttle bay. We're taking the assault shuttles to the Sylvan command ship. As the crew moved to execute her orders, Maya stepped closer to the viewport, studying the disabled Sylvan flagship in the distance. It was massive, at least 5 times the size of the Horizons, with the distinctive organic-looking architecture that characterized Sylvan design. Its hull was scorched and breached in several places from the quantum cascade, but the main structure remained intact. "Commander," Dr. Reed said quietly, approaching Maya at the viewport. "There's something else you should know. Something about the Sylvans." Maya turned to face her. "What is it, Doctor?" "When the quantum cascade hit their fleet, our sensors detected unusual energy patterns from their ships. Not just from their technology, but from the Sylvans themselves." Reed's eyes were intense. Their bodies exhibited quantum entanglement at a biological level. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the Sylvans themselves are partially quantum beings. Their consciousness exists partly in normal space and partly in another dimension." Reed paused. "It explains why they've been so determined to eradicate us. Our very existence, our purely 3-dimensional biology, is fundamentally incompatible with their perception of reality." Maya absorbed this revelation. "How does this help us?" "It means we have a weakness we can exploit," Reed explained. "The quantum disruption that affected their ships also temporarily severed their connection to this other dimension. They're vulnerable right now in a way they've never been before." A small, determined smile crossed Maya's face. "Then we'd better move quickly." Within the hour, 2 assault shuttles launched from the Horizons Bay, each carrying 10 heavily armed crew members. Maya led the first shuttle, with Lieutenant Wilson commanding the second. They approached the Sylvan flagship cautiously, alert for any signs of defensive measures. "No energy signatures from their weapons systems," reported pilot Nadia Zakharov from the shuttle's controls. "But I'm detecting movement inside the ship. They're still alive in there." "As expected," Maya replied, checking her plasma rifle. "We're not here for extermination. We want their ship intact and operational." The assault shuttle circled the massive alien vessel, looking for an entry point. The Sylvan flagship was shaped like an elongated hexagon, with what appeared to be a bridge structure at the forward section and massive engine arrays at the rear. Multiple hull breaches provided potential access points. There, Maya pointed to a large opening near what appeared to be a secondary command center. "That looks promising. Take us in." Zakharov guided the shuttle toward the breach, matching velocity with the drifting flagship. Radiation levels are elevated but within tolerable limits. Atmosphere has vented from this section. "Perfect," Maya replied. "That means we won't have to deal with their toxic air until we secure the area." The shuttle eased through the jagged hull breach, its landing lights illuminating a vast, eerily organic-looking chamber beyond. Unlike human ships with their utilitarian design, Sylvan vessels incorporated biological elements into their construction. The walls pulsed faintly with what looked like circuitry, but behaved more like blood vessels. "Second shuttle is right behind us," Zakharov confirmed as she sat down on what appeared to be a secondary deck. Maya activated her comms. "All teams, remember the objective. We secure the bridge and engineering. We need control of life support and propulsion. Avoid unnecessary engagements with Sylvan crew. They're weakened, but still dangerous." Her team acknowledged the orders as they prepared to disembark. Each member wore sealed combat armor with integrated oxygen supplies and heads-up displays showing tactical information. "Move out," Maya ordered as the shuttle's ramp descended. The boarding party advanced into the alien ship, weapons at the ready. The Sylvan interior was disorienting. Corridors curved in unnatural ways, and the lighting pulsed with an eerie blue-green glow. Gravity was inconsistent, stronger in some areas and weaker in others. "Life signs ahead," warned Corporal Tanner, the team's security specialist. checking a handheld scanner. Multiple Sylvans, moving erratically. Maya held up a fist, signaling the team to halt. Defensive positions. They hadn't long to wait. A group of Sylvan crew members appeared around a bend in the corridor, moving with the strange, fluid grace of their species. Unlike humans, Sylvans possessed 6 limbs, 4 for locomotion, and 2 primary manipulator arms. Their normally iridescent skin was dull, and they moved with less coordination than Maya had observed in previous encounters. "They're affected by the quantum disruption," Dr. Reed whispered from behind Maya. She had insisted on joining the boarding party, arguing that her knowledge of Sylvan biology might prove crucial. The Sylvans spotted the human boarding party and reacted with alarm. Several raised what appeared to be weapons, organic-looking devices that seemed to be extensions of their arms rather than carried tools. "Hold fire unless they shoot first," Maya ordered her team. The standoff lasted several tense seconds. Then, unexpectedly, the Sylvans lowered their weapons and backed away, their 4 black eyes blinking in what Reed had once described as a sign of confusion or distress. "They're retreating," Tanner said, disbelief evident in his voice. "It's the quantum disruption," Reed explained. "Without their full connection to the higher dimension, they're experiencing something akin to extreme disorientation. They may not even recognize us as the same species they've been fighting." Maya nodded. "Lucky for us. Let's move before they recover. Wilson, take your team to engineering. We'll secure the bridge." The boarding parties split up, moving deeper into the alien vessel. They encountered more Sylvan crew members, but each group retreated rather than engaging. It was a surreal experience. Moving through an enemy ship without resistance, watching their feared adversaries flee before them. "This is almost too easy," muttered Corporal Tanner as they approached what sensors indicated was the ship's bridge. "Don't get complacent," Maya warned. "Admiral Tylos will be different. He's their leader for a reason." The bridge of the Sylvan flagship was a vast, cathedral-like chamber. Unlike human bridges with their clear command structures and dedicated stations, the Sylvan Command Center resembled a biological nerve cluster. Control interfaces were integrated into what looked like living tissue, and the entire room pulsed with the same blue-green light they had observed throughout the ship. Admiral Tylos stood at the center of this alien nerve center, surrounded by a handful of senior officers. Unlike his crew, the Admiral did not retreat at the sight of the human boarding party. His 4 black eyes fixed on Maya with unmistakable recognition. "Commander Chen," he said, his voice translated by Dr. Reed's portable device. "You surprised me again. Boarding my vessel is either remarkably brave or utterly foolish." Maya kept her weapon trained on him, but made no aggressive move. "Your ship is disabled, Admiral. Your fleet is destroyed. Your crew is incapacitated. I'm offering you a chance to surrender." A sound emanated from Silos that the translator interpreted as laughter. "Surrender? To a 3-dimensional species? Even in our weakened state, such a concept is amusing. Your amusement will be short-lived," Maya replied coolly. "We need your ship's warp drive. We can take it without your cooperation, but that would be messy." Thylos studied her with an unnerving intensity. "You continue to defy expectations, human. Our intelligence indicated your species was primitive, incapable of manipulating quantum states. Yet your weapon suggests otherwise." "We've been underestimated before," Maya said. "It rarely ends well for those who make that mistake." Before Xylos could respond, Maya's comms crackled to life. "Commander, this is Wilson. We've secured engineering, but we have a situation. The warp drive is unusual. It appears to be partially biological. Saito says it's unlike anything she's ever seen." Maya kept her eyes on Silos. "Can we operate it?" "Negative," Wilson replied. "At least not without Sylvan assistance. It seems to require some kind of biological interface." Maya considered this complication. Then she addressed Tylos again. "It seems we find ourselves in an interesting position, Admiral. You need a functioning ship. We need a functioning warp drive. Perhaps we can help each other. What are you proposing? Silos asked, his tone wary but curious. A temporary truce, Maya said. You help us operate your warp drive to reach human territory. In exchange, we help you restore minimal function to your ship and leave you with enough supplies to be recovered by your people. Silas's alien features were difficult to read, but his posture suggested skepticism. Why would I assist the beings who destroyed my fleet? Because the alternative is dying here, Admiral. Your life support systems are failing. Without power restoration, your crew will perish long before any Sylvan rescue arrives. Maya lowered her weapon slightly. Consider it a professional courtesy between commanders. There was a long silence as Hylos appeared to weigh his options. Finally, he made a gesture that resembled a nod. Your logic is sound, Commander Chen. I will assist you, not out of mercy, but necessity. His black eyes narrowed. But know this, our conflict is not ended. This is merely a pause in hostilities. I wouldn't expect anything less, Maya replied. Over the next several hours, an uneasy collaboration formed between the human boarders and the Sylvan crew. Chief Engineer Sado worked directly with Sylvan technicians to restore power to critical systems. Dr. Reed studied the biological components of the Sylvan technology, fascinated despite the circumstances. Meanwhile, Maya maintained contact with the Horizons, where Dr. Volkov was working frantically to stabilize the quantum core long enough for the evacuation of all remaining crew. We've got less than an hour before critical failure, Volkov reported, his voice tense. After that, the quantum collapse will create a miniature singularity. Anything within 1,000 kilometers will be drawn in. Understood, Maya replied. We're accelerating the evacuation. Shuttles are en route to collect the remaining crew now. On the Sylvan flagship, now designated Commandeered Vessel Defiance in Maya's reports, preparations were underway for the jump to human space. The Sylvan warp drive, a strange hybrid of technology and biology, was being calibrated for coordinates provided by the humans. It's remarkable, Seto told Maya, as they stood in the alien engine room. Their drive doesn't push the ship through space so much as it pulls space around the ship, and it's partially sentient. It needs to be persuaded, not just programmed. Maya raised an eyebrow. Persuaded. The Sylvans communicate with it telepath.